I arrived at the mansion of Mr. Reginald just at sundown. That's when the game was supposed to begin. I'd received an invitation in the mail for a night of party games with a huge cash prize for the winner. I was really struggling to pay off my student loans, so I couldn't say no. The door opened, and a tall, elderly man greeted me. He said his name was Mr. Reginald, and he ushered me inside. The two other players were already there, Harvey and Jackson. Harvey was about my age, early 20s, though he was much smaller than I was. Jackson was probably in his 30s, and he seemed quite out of shape. Right away, I knew I had a good chance of winning the prize. Reginald led us to a grand dining room where we sat at an elaborate table covered with all kinds of food. We ate and talked. The other players seemed a little nervous, which seemed a bit strange. This was just a fun game night, right? When we were done eating, Mr. Reginald rose from his chair and explained the rules. He had planned a series of challenges based on childhood games. After each challenge, a player would be eliminated until only one winner could claim the prize. He assured us that there were no tricks involved. I didn't quite believe him, though. There was something strange about his expression, like he was toying with us. Harvey and I exchanged glances. He was thinking the same thing I was. Jackson, meanwhile, kept his expression unreadable. I could tell he really wanted to win. Mr. Reginald led us into an adjoining room where he explained the first game. It was freeze tag. One player would be it, chasing the others around the mansion. If he catches someone, then they freeze in place. It's a game I used to play all the time back in elementary school. Mr. Reginald asked who would like to be it, and I immediately raised my hand. I figured that I had the best chance of catching the others. The man pulled out a small black box and he handed it to me. "Once you put this on," he said, "the timer starts. You have 15 minutes to freeze the others." Inside the box was a black glove covered in wires and metal plates. Must have been really expensive. I pulled out the glove and slid it onto my hand. The other players instantly ran out of the room. The glove felt normal at first, but after a few seconds it tightened around my wrist. I couldn't pull it off, and slowly my hand began to feel cold. I tested out the glove by touching the wall. Ice immediately formed on the wallpaper. Mr. Reginald had taken the idea of freeze tag very literally. "Go," Mr. Reginald told me. "The clock is ticking." I started down the hallway, walking slowly so that they couldn't hear my footsteps. I tried to listen for any kind of movement, but the mansion was deathly quiet. As I rounded the corner into another hallway, I started to speed up. My hand was throbbing from the cold now. It was getting colder every second I wore it. I pulled at the band around my wrist, but it was tighter than ever. This glove was not coming off. That's when I started to panic. I'd been wearing the glove for less than a minute, and I was already in terrible pain. If I kept it on for the whole 15 minutes, I was sure I'd get frostbite. My only choice was to find the other players and end the game fast. The hallway led into a wide library with thousands of books and a bunch of furniture. There were plenty of places to hide, so I assumed at least one of the other players was in here. It didn't take me long to find Jackson curled up under a desk. It would have been a good hiding spot, but now that I'd found him, he had no way to escape. He was trapped there, and all I had to do was touch him with the glove. "Don't!" he begged. "Please!" My hand was in so much pain now. I felt like my fingers were going to fall off. Deep down, I knew that if I touched him with the glove, something very bad would happen. This wasn't just a normal game. This was dangerous. But I couldn't bear the pain anymore. I had to touch him. I reached forward, and I pressed the glove against his cheek. He immediately screamed in pure agony. And when I pulled the glove away, ice crystals had formed on the side of his face. My hand, thankfully, was no longer in pain. It seemed that all the cold had transferred to Jackson. I thought he'd just have freezer burn on his face, but as I watched in horror, I saw that his skin was crumbling away in frozen chunks. Within seconds, he slumped forward, dead. His face was almost completely gone. My glove clicked once and fell off my hand. Mr. Reginald's voice came out of an unseen loudspeaker from the ceiling. "Time is up. Will the remaining players please return to the dining room?" I took one last look at poor Jackson and trudged back to the dining room. This game was not right. I needed to get out of there before I ended up like Jackson. When I got to the dining room, Harvey was waiting for me. "Did you catch the other guy?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "He's out of the game." That's all I said. I couldn't tell him that he was lying dead in the other room. Harvey looked at me suspiciously. He could tell that I was hiding something from him. Mr. Reginald joined us, a huge smile across his face. "It looks like there's just 2 left. Are you ready for round 2? I opened my mouth to say no, but before I could, Harvey shouted, "I'm ready!" "Good," Mr. Reginald answered, "because I've decided to raise the prize pot to $2 million. He nodded toward the door. "This is your last chance to leave now." I knew I should have left, but the idea of becoming a millionaire was something I couldn't refuse. Besides, I had one advantage over Harvey. I knew that the danger was real, and he didn't. Slowly, I nodded. Let's continue. Harvey and I sat at the grand dining room table, waiting for Mr. Reginald to tell us his next twisted game. I was racked with guilt for not telling Harvey that the other player had been killed. Deep down, I knew that I'd made a grave mistake for not leaving, but it was too late to back out now. Mr. Reginald stood at the head of the table, grinning at us both. "For our next game, we're going to play Capture the Flag." The rules seemed simple enough. We each had to hide a flag somewhere in the mansion. Once we were ready, we had 15 minutes to find the other's flag. If we returned it to Mr. Reginald before the timer stopped, we'd win $2 million. If we didn't, we were eliminated. I could only assume that the elimination would be just as deadly as the other round. "What if we both find the flags?" Harvey asked. "Then you both receive $1 million, Reginald explained. He pulled 2 flags out of his pocket. He handed the blue one to me and the red one to Harvey. "It's time to find your hiding places." And with that, he left the room. Harvey and I exchanged glances. He was about to say something, but I ran off before I could hear it. Because Harvey was shorter than me, I decided to hide his flag at the top of a tall wardrobe in the study. I could hear Harvey running around in the library, so I knew that's where his flag was. Mr. Reginald's voice came on the loudspeaker, telling us to return to the dining room immediately. I got there first, but Harvey was right behind me. He checked to see if Reginald was nearby and then whispered, "Tell me where yours is and I'll tell you where mine is." "The study," I told him. "The library," he said, "under a pile of maps." He paused. "Where exactly in the study?" Before I could answer, Mr. Reginald returned to the room. "Sharing secrets?" he asked. "No," we both said. "Good. You now have 15 minutes for your search. Clock starts now." I ran straight to the library and found his flag in no time at all. I could hear Harvey through the wall. It sounded like he was throwing stuff onto the floor in his desperate search. From the loudspeaker, Mr. Reginald shouted, "Once you have your flag, please return it to me." I had 2 choices. I could go straight to Mr. Reginald, or I could return to the study and help Harvey. I thought about this for a while, but in the end, I went back to our host. Harvey still had time to find the flag. He could make it. When I re-entered the dining room, Mr. Reginald grabbed the flag out of my hands and congratulated me on a job well done. Your competitor still has 5 minutes. I thought about helping him. I really did. But in the end, I just stood in silence next to Mr. Reginald as the clock slowly ran out. Mr. Reginald announced that time was up, and Harvey trudged back into the room empty-handed. He was glaring at me, so I looked away. My apologies, Mr. Reginald told him, but it looks like you have been eliminated. He pulled a lever on the wall, and a trapdoor opened up right under Harvey. 1 second he was there, and the next he was gone. The trapdoor slammed closed immediately after, so I never got to see what became of him. Smiling, Mr. Reginald reached out his hand. Good job, sir. We shook hands. On one hand, I was proud of myself for winning both games, but on the other, I felt horrible. I knew that Harvey was going to be killed, and yet I didn't help him. Right this way, the man said. It's time to claim your reward. Unless... He stopped, letting his word hang in the air. Unless what? Unless you'd like me to bring in more challengers and start again. I can raise the prize amount. No! I shouted. I'm done. Are you sure? He said that he rarely met a competitor as bloodthirsty as me. He said I had a real talent. That just made me feel guiltier. No, I'm done. He grabbed me by the shoulder and guided me to a door I hadn't noticed before. Step inside. The money's waiting for you. All you have to do is take it and leave through the exit. He watched me as I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind me. In the center of the room was an envelope with the money check. Behind it was another door, this one with a neon exit sign. I never wanted to see Reginald again, so I grabbed the envelope and headed for the exit. It wouldn't open. The loudspeaker crackled again. The exit will only open if you press the 2 buttons on the wall. Simple enough, right? I saw one red button on the wall, but I didn't see the other one. I looked around the room and I couldn't find it. And then, finally, I saw a second red button on the opposite wall. I pressed them both, one at a time, but the door still wouldn't open. You have to press them at the same time, sir, Mr. Reginald explained through the speaker. And then it took me a second to realize the weight of his words. It was physically impossible to press both buttons at once. The exit would only open if there were 2 people in the room. But since Harvey was gone, I was stuck here. I tried the other door, the one I'd entered, but that one wouldn't open either. I could hear Mr. Reginald laughing on the other side. I demanded that he let me leave. I screamed at him. I called him a liar and a psycho. I never lied, he said. You won the money fair and square. Unfortunately, I never promised to let you escape. I spent the next hour trying to figure out how to get out of that room, but it was useless. I couldn't press both buttons at once, and I couldn't pry open the door. So now, I'm sitting here, holding more money than I can ever spend. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. And I feel completely hopeless. Mr. Reginald was never going to let anyone get out of here alive. The other players died quickly, but I guess I'm going to just starve to death. This story is inspired from a true incident shared by one of our Broccoli Fam subscribers, Henry. We have changed the name of the characters in the story for personal reasons. More on this incident after this story. Her cough was unending, dragging phlegm through the dry passageway of her throat. I would watch her as the aqueous matter pulled up from her esophagus. She only stopped when she had trapped the phlegm in her mouth. Then she would allow it to stew into a pool in her mouth for a moment before swallowing. "It's a sinus infection," Linda would say to me, as though it was supposed to make the experience any less disgusting. It annoyed me greatly, and I would feel my fist ball up. To relieve myself, I would shut my eyes until my balled-up fist eased into the moment. Then I would pick myself up from my seat, no matter how neck-deep in work I was, because, frankly, I could not stand the sight of her. 10 months of such torment, and my loathing simmered, burning intensely with each instance of her constant coughing and swallowing. My grated nerves, despite my own affirmations of being above petty grievance, received fresh wounds when she did it near me. 10 months was a long time, and it was only so much skin that could be scraped off before the flesh bleeds. The incident threw me over the edge happened at the coffee dispenser one cold winter afternoon. I had been working on my report for the month and had been buzzed for the work ahead of me, fetching my cup of coffee as I struggled to keep the data in my head from distraction. I mouthed some of the data too. I had not seen her walk up to the coffee dispenser beside me. Perhaps if I did, I would have managed my emotions better. She had materialized behind me like a specter and announced herself with the sound of her cough. I was so startled that I shook, and it affected my own reconciliation of the data I had struggled to remember. Linda stared at me sheepishly. "Are you all right, Adam?" she asked with a mouthful. I spun around, and there she stood, with her phlegm in her mouth just before she swallowed. Rage mixed with disgust was a potent fuel, and my hand left my side before I could consider restraint. My slap sent her tumbling to the ground. Realizing what I had done, I quickly apologized and tried to help her up, but Linda was furious, and we had company in a blink. She explained that I had slapped her, and in an out-of-body experience, I tried to apologize to her and all the accusing eyes on me. Not a word of what I said in apology saved me from the sack on grounds of assault. "You're lucky she's choosing not to take up criminal action against you," Marty, the HR guy, said to me. But it did not matter. I resented her. She had tortured me for 10 months, and finally had destroyed my career. It was an evil, despicable fate to suffer, and with each passing day that I allowed myself to spiral in the thought, I felt an urgent darkness overwhelm me, pushing me towards revenge. I needed her to feel my pain. The pain of something being taken away from her by no fault of her own. I found Dr. Blake, who was willing to perform any surgical procedure for the right price. Dr. Blake was very much like me in the predicament. He had been disgracefully discharged from being a surgeon for a minor oversight, and he wanted to get his lick back at society. Convincing him to fix her was no difficult task. I did the rest of the work of figuring out how to break into her apartment. A small house with 2 rooms, furnished to cater to her single taste. We stepped into the house as quietly as we could, and tried to figure out which of the rooms she was in. Perhaps it was our faint whispers and the soft rustling of our feet through the house that woke her up, but she soon came out of one of the rooms, stumbling through the bleak lighting in the house. I adjusted my eyes to the light spilling through the cracks of the blinds. Who's there?" she inquired in a shaky voice as she stepped forward, fearing a nightmare that had breached reality. I could sense her terror, and for some reason it made me feel powerful. "She lives alone?" Dr. Blake whispered to me. I turned to him and nodded. His face was obscured by the surgical mask on his face, and his gloved hands glinted under the faint light. My lips curled in a vengeful smirk. I was really doing it. Linda coughed gruffly, and I was transported back to that raw feeling of annoyance that her coughing stirred in me. "I will call the cops," she declared as she maneuvered the blackness without trying to find us. It pissed me off in the darkness where I had hidden with Dr. Blake. Half expecting her to move towards us, I was surprised by the brisk movement of Dr. Blake from my side. The shock seized the breath from my lungs. He was quick, and before Linda could scream out in terror, his cold hand clamped over her mouth. My heart thundered, and the deafening rhythm matched the rush of panic that flooded my veins. My eyes darted to the room, wide and desperate, looking for a way to approach her without being recognized. The room was dark enough, I assumed, so I moved in to assist Dr. Blake. "This will only take a moment. Try not to move." Dr. Blake spoke in a calm, detached tone as though discussing a routine procedure. A cold chill ran down my spine as her terror escalated. She thrashed violently against our grip, her muffled cries drowned out by the sound of duct tape being torn from the roll. Dr. Blake was surgical with his process, and soon she was bound up, hands and feet. "Don't fight it." Dr. Blake's voice sounded like a venomous whisper as he held up a syringe filled with a liquid shimmering ominously in the dim light. "This will numb the area." With that, he administered the syringe. The needle plunged into her neck, and the sting caused her to shriek through the duct tape on her mouth. Linda shook her head violently, and the tears streaming down her face satisfied my urge for revenge. "Oh," Dr. Blake muttered. "What is it?" I asked. She shook, and my needle punctured her vocal cord," he lamented. She heard it, and I saw a deathly fright in her eyes overcome with fear. "I don't care," I scoffed. The futility of her struggle fulfilled me. I watched her take breaths into her lungs with heaving gasps until she was immobile as the injection took its effect on her. Wordlessly, Dr. Blake laid out his instruments on a towel spread on the floor. The cold steel of his scalpel glinted in the light as Dr. Blake positioned himself over her. His first incision was sharp and precise, carving a fine line along her throat. The horrifying pressure of the blade slicing through every tissue made me smile. I could feel her mind, unconscious but awake, struggling through a cacophony of pain. Her body screamed for escape, but the numbing agent dulled her muscles as it did her voice. Trapped, immobile and utterly powerless, the sickening noise of her flesh parting under the cold blade of Dr. Blake's instrument would haunt her for life, I was sure, and it made me happy. We worked on her for about 3 hours, and Dr. Blake was finally done. He stitched her up, and we left her to recover, knowing that she may never speak again. I wrote a note on her table for when she would wake up, and planned my escape away from where she would ever reach me. "Now you will understand what it's like to suffer in silence." Well, in the real-life incident, Henry did not break into the house of his colleague. But he did try to raise a complaint against her to HR and the boss. Henry told me that the worst part was that, in spite of his complaints, no action was taken against the woman because in the last 2 months, 2 of the people in his team had resigned due to work pressure from the boss. Due to this, the boss was on the back foot. Poor Henry kept on suffering for another 6 months before he could manage to get transferred to another department within the same company.
This story is based on a true incident faced by one of our Broccoli fam subscribers, Andrew. He works as a delivery pizza person, and he's seen some crazy shit. He says that this one incident was the top crazy thing he'd witnessed in all of his years of delivering pizza. It was the summer before my senior year in college, and I was working late shifts at Tony's Pizza Shack to save up for tuition. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and offered a front row seat to the weirdness of a small town. Most nights were uneventful. A few cranky customers, kids playing pranks, or couples arguing over toppings. But one night an order came through that would haunt me forever. The ticket read, House on Barlow Street, 4 large supreme pizzas, 2 garlic breadsticks, and 6 2-liter sodas. A hefty order, but not unheard of. What raised my eyebrows was the note. Use side door. Knock twice. I glanced at my coworker Jenna. You ever delivered at Barlow Street? I asked. She wrinkled her nose. Avoid it like the plague. Heard it's full of squatters and weirdos. I shrugged. It was my turn to take the next run. Grabbing the pizzas, I loaded them into the back of my aging Civic and set off into the humid night. Barlow Street wasn't a neighborhood. It was a forgotten strip of decrepit houses. Most windows were boarded up, the yards overgrown with weeds. The house at 1213 Barlow was no different. The porch sagged dangerously, and the siding peeled off old paint like a canvas. The side door was barely visible under the tangled mess of ivy. Balancing the stack of pizzas, I knocked twice as instructed. Moments later, the door creaked open, revealing a man in his 40s, thin as a rail, with sunken eyes that darted nervously. "You're late," he said, his voice gravely. "Traffic," I lied. "That'll be 6285. "Come in," he replied, ignoring my outstretched hand. "Oh, I'm good right here," I said, shifting my weight. "Too much for you to carry," he insisted, his tone hardening. Before I could protest, he stepped aside, gesturing me in. Reluctantly, I stepped into the dimly lit house. The stench hit me first, a nauseating mix of sweat, mildew, and something rotten. The living room was strange. Several twin mattresses sprawled across the floor, covered in stained sheets. At the center of it all was a massive woman, easily over 500 pounds, lying on her side, her eyes glazed over as she watched a static-filled TV. "Just set it there," the man said, pointing to a cluttered coffee table. I dropped the pizzas quickly, eager to leave, but something about the woman caught my eye. Her lips moved slightly, as if trying to speak, but no sound came out. The man noticed and stepped between us. "You've seen enough," he said sharply. "Don't make me regret letting you in." Chilled by his tone, I nodded and turned to leave. As I reached the door, he grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "Don't tell anyone about her," he hissed, "or you'll regret it." I yanked my arm free and bolted to the car. My hands trembled as I started the engine and sped away. Back at the pizzeria, I told Jenna about the encounter. Her face paled. "Oh, that must be Sheila," she said. "Who?" I asked. "There's this urban legend about a woman who used to live on Barlow Street. She's been bedridden because of her weight, and the local drunks take care of her. Except that's not exactly Good Samaritans." "What do you mean?" "They use her," Jenna said quietly. "Get her food in exchange for whatever cash she has left, and some say other things. People tried reporting it, but no one's ever been able to prove anything. She's like this ghost everyone knows about, but no one sees." I felt sick. "We need to call the cops." "And tell them what? That a creepy guy bought pizza for a woman who's probably there by choice? Good luck." She had a point, but something about the woman's eyes, desperate, pleading, stuck with me. Next week, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd walked into something far darker than I realized. I found myself driving past 1213 Barlow, parking at the end of the street to watch the house. I saw the man come and go, often with other men, carrying bags of takeout and beer. One night, a black van pulled up. Two men dragged a woman out. She was young, maybe in her 20s, and looked terrified. I grabbed my phone and snapped a photo of the license plate. My heart pounded as I debated calling the police. What if they didn't believe me? What if the man found out I was watching? I couldn't stay silent. The next day, I visited a friend of mine, Marcus, who worked as a journalist for the local paper. "That sounds insane," he said after I explained everything. "But if you got a photo of the van and its plate, I can dig around." Days passed without word. Then, one evening, Marcus called. "You were right," he said, his voice tense. "The van's registered to a guy with priors for trafficking. And get this, the house on Barlow Street, it's not even supposed to have occupants. The county condemned it years ago." A pit formed in my stomach. "Well, what do we do?" "Can't do much, buddy. It's not safe, and I can't waste my time getting involved in all this. Flying to Milan tomorrow to see my girlfriend, so I'll see you later." Without Marcus on my side and me being a college student, I just had to let the whole incident go. To be honest, I still think about it sometimes. I would like to thank Andrew for sharing his story. If you have faced some bizarre, creepy, or scary incident, Feel free to mail broccolianimations@gmail.com. If you have photos or videos or recordings to substantiate your story, that would be amazing.
It started like any other relationship. Simple, sweet, unassuming. I met her one chilly evening at a rooftop bar. She was enchanting, carrying the weight of some invisible burden in her eyes. Her name was Claire. She told me she had just moved to the city looking for a fresh start. I didn't pry. I had my ways of finding out things. From the beginning, I knew she had secrets. People like Claire always do. But she was perfect. Too perfect to let go. Handsome, successful, and caring. That's what she called me, right? I was the Prince Charming she'd been waiting for. But she didn't realize I wasn't just charming. I was meticulous, calculated. When Claire finally opened up about her past, about Miguel, her violent ex who she had escaped from, I felt something stir deep inside me. It wasn't pity, no, it was an opportunity. Miguel? I asked, tilting my head and feigning concern. What was his last name? Why? She asked hesitantly. Just curious, I replied with a disarming smile. You know, in case he ever tries to find you. I could help. She told me. People always tell me. And that was all I needed. That night, while Claire slept peacefully, her phone buzzing occasionally with late-night notifications, I was in my element. My laptop screen glowed dimly in the dark room as I navigated through the labyrinthine corridors of the deep web. It didn't take long to find the right site. Kill swap. A stroke of genius, really. You get paired with someone else, swap targets, and ensure total anonymity. No motive, no connection. Perfect. Goodbye, Miguel. The next morning, I hummed a tune while flipping pancakes in the kitchen. Claire stumbled in, still groggy, and sat at the counter. Mornin', she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. Mornin', beautiful, I replied, sliding a plate in front of her. Eat up. You got a big day ahead. She smiled at me, oblivious. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Later that day, I surprised her at work with a bouquet of flowers. She looked at me confused, but happy. What's this for? She asked. No reason, I said. I just wanted to see you smile. We went for a walk in the park, hand in hand, the flowers resting in her arms. The perfect couple. Except I wasn't perfect. I was a predator. Halfway through our walk, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I stopped and turned to her, a smug smile spreading across my face. So, how's Miguel? I asked, casually. She froze, her eyes widening. What do you mean? Oh, Claire, you don't have to worry about Miguel anymore. Let's just say he's been taken care of. Her face turned pale as I explained everything. How I had found a perfect stranger to eliminate Miguel. How the system was foolproof. How I'd signed her up as the reciprocating party. You what? She screamed. Relax, I said, my tone dripping with condescension. It's not like you're in any real danger. Just go to Santa Cruz, take care of your end of the deal, and we'll be even. She backed away, shaking her head. You're insane! I'm not going to kill anyone! Then you'll die instead, I said simply, my voice cold as ice. It's how the system works. No loose ends. She ran, of course. They always run. But it was pointless. I'd planned for every eventuality. I watched from a distance as she stormed into the police station, clutching the card with the Santa Cruz address. Predictable. What she didn't know was that the police couldn't help her. If anything, she had just sealed her fate, and the fates of everyone she cared about. It's been a week now. I'm sitting in a new city, under a new identity, sipping coffee in a quiet cafe. The news reports have started rolling in. Her uncle? Dead. More will be. And Claire? She's probably hiding, looking over her shoulder every second, waiting for the inevitable. That's the thing about fear. It's the greatest weapon. This story is based on a true incident shared by our Broccoli Fam subscriber, Eva. She had to deal with an evil colleague in the office who made her life a living hell. More on this incident after the story. The names have been changed in this story for personal reasons. In the history of God's creation, Martha had to be his most diabolical product. You could think of the most vile human to ever walk the earth, and Martha would give them a run for their money. It is how she was, how we all thought her to be. She smiled ever so sweetly, you would be tricked to think this spawn of the devil herself had any good in her being. She was fat in a way that made her look like a doll. Her cheeks were the size of 2 golf balls put together, and they were sometimes blush red from all of the rumors that she housed for her lips to speak. Malice, sabotage, cruel and damaging gossips that she would gain from all of us co-workers would be used to scuttle promotions and land anybody she fancied in trouble. And she never ever denied it. She simply looked her accuser in the eyes as though what they were saying did not concern her, and when they were done, she would be left alone. Once I had been a victim of her treachery. I had lost a project that would have taken my career to the next level because she had told the boss of my problems with my boyfriend and called me unreliable. A fabricated affair to boot with Dylan in accounting, and I was in hot water for a while. Still, I couldn't bring myself to acknowledge how this seemingly simple woman in her early 50s could decide to ruin people's lives without a qualm on her conscience. Megan had quit 3 months ago, giving the reason that her mental health was being threatened by such a toxic environment. Martha had quickly spread word around the office that Megan was weak, and it's why she couldn't cope. I also found out Megan's mother had cancer, and Megan did not make enough time to go see her mother because she was working so much. All from Martha's lips. I could not let Martha win, not after all she had done to us. I knew confronting her directly would land me in hot water, so I spoke to Dylan about it. "Damn, I hate that lady," he said with venom when I was done speaking. Then he asked what I thought we could do to her. My first thought was something totally crazy. My eyes betrayed me. Dylan caught my mood and he coughed to ease the tension. Then he stood up, went to his door, and shut it, so it was just me and him in his office. "She needs to feel pain," I said, voice trembling but resolute. Dylan sighed. "I have some friends," Dylan suggested. "No," I muttered. "It has to come from our hands, so she knows that being an ass has its consequences." "Judith, it's a lot of risk," Dylan replied. I was not going to negotiate it, and Dylan told me he'd set something up. Dylan's plan went into effect about a fortnight after our conversation, and I noticed Martha looked like a shadow of herself. I scarcely ever spoke to her since the incident, but her forlorn eyes and her shaken demeanor was too good to deny myself of the knowledge of her pain. For some reason, I asked her about it before speaking to Dylan. "Nothing," she answered me, her meticulously crafted mask of kindness cracking as her confidence faltered. Dark circles under her sagging eye bags informed me of her trauma. Dylan confessed to me what he had done, and it made sense why Martha was so scared. He had hired a masked man to torture her at night for the whole weekend. The thought of her time counting down sent her into a hellhole of fear, and soon her work began to suffer. I relished her suffering. I enjoyed the look of utter despair in her eyes when she could not complete the basic work that she ought to be doing before we started our vengeance. I basked in the dismay in her eyes when I asked how she was doing, and she said she was doing fine. To hear her tone break as her reality collapsed into a nightmare gave me so much thrill that I told Dylan that we should be wary about wearing her out. Dylan agreed, and we made arrangements to bring her one final but decisive moment of horror. The perfect opportunity was presented one evening when Martha stayed late at the office to finish a task. We stayed back after everyone had left, and Dylan cut the light to the building from the ground floor, throwing the building into pitch blackness. We used the reserve energy from the elevator to get back to the office floor and then slipped into the office area stealthily. Martha remained at her seat, with a desk lamp that cast a pale glow as she typed furiously, trying to salvage her crumbling world. I slipped in through the main entrance, and I sensed her faint rhythmic tapping stop at once, breaking her concentration. The air froze, and tension caused sweat to break from the pores at the back of my neck. Dylan, who was with me, marched delicately towards the office, and in the darkness we watched her struggle, her breath hitching as terror overcame her. Is someone there? She called out into the empty space. Martha, Dylan whispered low. Please, not again. Not here. What have I done to you? She mewed. I will kill you this time, I recited without qualms, reducing my voice to a faint whiff that was unrecognizable even in my own ears. She spun around and scrambled out of her seat in sheer horror. She cried as she raced past us in the corners where we had hidden, aiming for the elevator. The elevator beeped open from its reserve energy, and she entered. The elevator mustered a slow, whirring noise, and the lights from the contraption flickering as the machine droned slowly from a lack of electricity. Panic set in as the floor was now totally pitch black. She tapped frantically at the emergency button, screeching violently for pity. Please, whoever you are, I'm begging, Martha sobbed. She threw herself at the wall of the elevator and slid to the ground. Say your final prayers, Martha, Dylan droned. Martha raced out of the open elevator, and she stumbled on her face, knocking her head against the floor. As quickly as she fell, she was once again on her feet, rushing out towards the stairs. She screamed loud as she ran, chased by her own fright. Her voice was lost in the night, and even though we didn't harm her physically, we knew that the lesson we had taught her was one that she would live with for an eternity. Not surprisingly, Martha's desk was cleared out when I resumed work the next day, and no one questioned her sudden resignation. The office was lighter, and the mood was brighter from then onwards. Eva told me via email that her evil office colleague could go to any lengths and do anything to safeguard her interests and put everyone else in the office down, especially the people she didn't like. Now, in the real incident, they did not scare away Martha, but the HR was shown some damning evidence of Martha's wrongdoing. Thankfully, Megan has rejoined the office, and things are better now.
This story is inspired from a true incident which happened in Oklahoma. A video showing Bigfoot resting against a tree went viral, spreading curiosity and widespread panic among the people. More about it after the story. My best friend John and I always pulled pranks together. We'd been doing it since high school. At first, it was just little things, like moving all the desks from our classrooms and putting them out on the football field. That was a good one. But over time, our jokes got more elaborate. Right before graduation, we stole 3 sheep from a nearby farm and let them loose in our school. We painted numbers on the side of each sheep, 1, 2, and 4. That way, everyone thought there was an extra sheep wandering somewhere around the school. The principal canceled classes and spent all day looking for a 4th sheep that wasn't there. Genius, right? You'd think we'd grow out of this after we graduated, but we really didn't. John and I pulled a bunch of even bigger pranks throughout our small town, and we never ever got caught. Last summer, John called me up, saying he had the best idea yet. I rushed over to his trailer and saw an extremely realistic-looking Bigfoot costume. John had ordered it on eBay. He had 2 of them, actually. A bigger one for him because he was taller, and a smaller one for me. His plan was to wander around the town at night, mostly parks and neighborhoods on the edge of town. We'd stay long enough for people to spot us, and then run away if anyone got too close. It was a huge success. After about a week, people were posting on Facebook about the Yeti sightings. By the 2nd week, someone had finally gotten a video of me in the costume. It was from a distance, so the video wasn't great, but it really riled people up. Now there was proof that Bigfoot was terrorizing our town. For weeks, things kept getting crazier and crazier. 2 different YouTube channels did reports about us. Most people knew that it was just a prank, but that didn't stop people from having wild conspiracies. After a while, it got a little repetitive. I told John that we should probably stop, but John was in too deep. He got really manic and said, "We gotta take things to the next level, man." I didn't know what that meant. That night, he took his suit and entered my neighbor's yard. This time, he didn't just walk around. He absolutely trashed the place, breaking the fence, tearing up an inflatable pool, throwing trash everywhere. My neighbor had a camera on his porch, so all the destruction was caught on video. He even brought a lawn gnome back with him as a little trophy. As soon as I saw the footage online, I called John up and told him I was out. I didn't want to be a part of this anymore. Dressing up like Bigfoot was one thing, but I didn't want to destroy property and steal stuff. That was illegal. He got angry at me, but eventually he listened to reason. "All right, man. Let's take a break for a month and then talk about it again." But he didn't take a break. He went out again the next night and broke all the windows of a church. People got really upset over it. There were protesters outside the church the next day, carrying signs and stuff. Pretty much everyone knew that it was just a guy in a suit now, so the fun was gone. I was so upset that I refused to talk to John. He tried to call me a couple times, but I didn't answer. Another week went by, and his pranks got even worse. They weren't even pranks anymore. They were just vandalism. He broke into houses and stole things. He tried to light a restaurant on fire. Worst of all, he kidnapped a woman in her driveway in the middle of the day. Just snatched her up in some van that he didn't even own, and drove her to the next town over. She ended up escaping and running straight to the police, but she couldn't identify John because he wore the suit the whole time and didn't say anything. That was the last straw. Even though John had been my best friend since kindergarten, I had to turn him in. I started to drive to the police station, but about halfway there, I chickened out and drove to John's place instead. I wanted to give him one more chance. When I got there, John was in a total panic. He was pacing around the room and talking to himself. I told him that he needed to turn himself in. "It's not me, man. You gotta believe me. Some psycho's trying to frame me." He said that he hadn't worn his suit since the last time we talked. Someone else must have ordered the exact same suit from eBay. He sounded like he was telling the truth, but I'd seen the camera footage. I knew it was him. He begged me to help him prove his innocence. I agreed. But when he went into the other room, I called 911 and told them to come over. When the police arrived, John tried to make a run for it. The cops tackled him to the ground and started searching the house. Right away, they found our 2 Bigfoot costumes, plus the lawn gnome he'd stolen. They had all the evidence they needed to arrest him, but they didn't just arrest him. They arrested me too. There were 2 costumes after all. Plus, John kept screaming that it was my fault, that I was the one who set him up. Thankfully, they put us in separate cop cars. Otherwise, I would have attacked him in the back seat. God, I was furious. At the police station, we got interviewed separately. I confessed to wearing the costume at first, but I placed the blame for all the illegal stuff on John. I was certain that he was doing the same thing to me. We ended up getting locked up together as we waited for trial. Neither of us said anything to each other. I'd be happy if I never talked to that jerk again. We didn't have money for bail, so we were stuck behind bars for 2 nights. It was miserable, especially because I was so angry at my former friend. Then on Monday morning, an officer came and released us. He said that the real Bigfoot had kidnapped another woman while we were locked up. The police were still figuring stuff out, but it looked like the guy had seen footage of our prank and decided to order an identical costume so he could commit crimes and have us to blame. With our help, they were able to track down the eBay seller, all the way in Virginia, by the way, and collect evidence of the real criminal. I guess it worked out okay for John and me, but we're still not talking to each other. I'm still mad that he tried to pin things on me, and I guess he's mad for the same reason. Whatever. It's time to grow up anyway. I'm not gonna pull any pranks ever again. In the true event, a viral video purportedly showing Bigfoot resting against a tree in Oklahoma's Parallel Forest was revealed to be part of an advertising campaign for the Bigfoot Head Shop in Lawton. The video, posted by user E_ManAlfaro, garnered over 1.2 million views and sparked widespread debate about its authenticity. Many viewers noted the creature resembled a costume from a Jack Link's beef jerky commercial, leading to skepticism about the video's legitimacy.
This story is inspired by a true incident submitted by one of my subscribers named Ryan. He used to work as a gym trainer. More of the incident after the video. When I first met Mark, he seemed like the kind of client every trainer dreamed of. Eager, motivated, and ready to make a change. He reached out online, paid up front for an 8-week program, and explained his goals in meticulous detail. He wanted to shed 30 pounds, build muscle, and get his life back on track. I'd seen transformations before, and with his determination, or so I thought, I believed that he could do it. The first week was about assessment and planning. We scheduled a Skype session where I evaluated his form on basic exercises. I created a customized workout plan that fit his busy schedule and wrote a detailed meal plan with the low-calorie recipes tailored to his tastes. I even calculated his macros and gave him a calorie limit to stick to. Mark seemed thrilled. "I've never had someone take so much time with me," he said, smiling into the webcam. "I won't let you down." By week 2, cracks began to show. Each day I checked in with him. "Hey man, how's your diet today? Did you get into the gym?" And day after day, his responses grew more disappointing. "Oh, I was too busy," he'd text back. "Work was insane today, so I just stayed home. Needed energy for a late meeting, so I grabbed pizza." By week 3, I was frustrated. I knew life would be chaotic, but Mark's excuses began to feel hollow. Still, I didn't want to give up on him. I set up another call to discuss adjustments. "Look, Mark," I said, trying to sound encouraging. "I know life's hectic, but we can figure this out. How can we make this easier for you?" He sighed and rubbed his face. "Honestly, I've got more important things to worry about besides going to the gym," he muttered. That should have been my cue to walk away, but I didn't. Instead, I spent hours revising his plan to make it even simpler. I thought I was helping. I had no idea what I was really getting into. A month into the program, I noticed something strange. A friend of mine, Jessica, who also trained clients online, mentioned a new guy she was working with. "His name was Mark," she said. "He's paying top dollar for meal plans and daily check-ins. Seems serious about his goals, but he always seems full of excuses." My stomach sank. Is he from New York?" I asked. "Yeah, why?" I didn't say anything at first. It felt absurd, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was the same Mark. I asked her to show me a picture, and sure enough, there he was, the same guy, grinning sheepishly in his profile photo. He had been working with both of us simultaneously, but why? It wasn't like he was following either of our programs. I decided to confront him. "Mark," I said during our Skype call, "are you working with another trainer?" He didn't even flinch. "Yeah, I've been consulting with a few different people," he said casually. "It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" I snapped. "You're paying for customized programs that you're not even following. "What's going on here?" He shrugged. "It's my money. Don't worry about it." Something about his tone made my skin crawl. He wasn't just lazy or unmotivated. There was something deeper at play, and I didn't press further. Not yet. A week later, Jessica called me in a panic. "You won't believe this," he said. "I just found out Mark's been selling our meal plans online. He's repackaging them and claiming they're his." What? I couldn't believe it. But when she sent me the link, there it was, a sleek website advertising Mark's Ultimate Fitness Guides. He'd taken our work, slapped his name on it, and was selling it for $50 a pop. Furious, I confronted him again. "You're stealing from us," I said. "Do you have any idea how unethical this is?" He smirked. "Calm down, you're not losing anything. You've already been paid." "That's not the point. It's our work. You can't just take it and profit off it." "Watch me," he said, his smirk widening. I couldn't let it go. I started digging into Mark's background and quickly discovered he had a history of scamming people. He'd been involved in several get-rich-quick schemes, promising investment returns that never materialized. One woman even sued him after losing her life savings. Jessica and I decided to take action. We gathered evidence and contacted a lawyer, but before we could file a case, something unexpected happened. Mark disappeared. At first, I thought he'd gone quiet to avoid legal trouble, but then his website went down. His phone number stopped working, and his social media accounts vanished. It was like he'd erased himself overnight. A month later, I got a call from a detective. "Are you Jason Cole?" he asked. Yes, how can I help you?" "We're investigating a case involving Mark Hughes. You were one of his trainers, correct?" Yes, I said, my heart pounding. "What's going on?" "Mark was found dead in his apartment last week. We're trying to piece together what happened." I was stunned. Dead? How? The detective wouldn't share many details, but he mentioned that Mark's death was being treated as suspicious. Apparently, he'd been involved with some dangerous people, and his deeds had finally caught up with him. The real incident happened around 5 years back. Ryan used to work as a professional gym trainer and nutritionist. In order to expand his client base, he started offering his services online. For personal reasons, we changed the name of the client to Mark. Mark made a lot of sales by copying the fitness meals and plans and selling them on his own. Once a lot of people complained, Mark disappeared, leaving no trace online. This story was inspired from a true incident shared by one of our Broccoli fam subscribers, Mike. His close friend changed for the worst. More about what Mike told me after the story. Names have been changed for personal reasons. It had been over a year since I'd last seen Eric. We used to be close friends, the kinds of friends that we would pick up right where we left off, but time and distance had chipped away all of that bond. Eric had moved to a new city for a better job, or so he said. When I heard he was going back into town, I decided to reach out. Nostalgia has a way of dulling the sharp edges of my memory, and I figured we would crack open a few beers, shoot the breeze, and reminisce about old times. Eric showed up on a Friday evening. He looked rough around the edges, thinner, with hollowed cheeks and eyes that darted around the room like a caged animal. Something felt off, but I brushed it aside. "Tough year?" I asked him as I handed him a beer. "Yeah, you could say that," he replied with a tight smile. "But it's good to see you, man. It feels like forever." I talked while he nursed his beer and listened. He asked a lot of questions about my job, my house, my routine. At the time, I thought I was just catching up, but in hindsight, he was gathering intel. At some point, I stepped out of the room to make a call. When I came back, Eric was thumbing through his phone, looking casual. I didn't think much of it. After I left that night, I felt good about reconnecting with an old friend, but that feeling didn't last. 2 weeks later, my world started to unravel. It began with small things. An unfamiliar $120 charge on electronics on my credit card, followed by a $500 withdrawal from my bank account at an ATM I never use. I called my bank thinking it was a mistake. Then the letters started coming. Credit card approvals for accounts I didn't apply for, collection notices for $2,000 luxury furniture purchases I hadn't made. My stomach churned as I realized that someone had stolen my identity. I reported the fraud immediately, but the damage was already done. My bank account was drained, my credit score tanked, and my name was tied to thousands of dollars in unpaid debts. That's when it hit me. Eric. It was my first gut instinct. But I retraced my steps, and the evidence began to pile up. The stolen checks, unauthorized charges, and even accounts opened in my name. All of it started after visiting Eric. I remember leaving him alone in the room that night, feeling sick to my stomach. Why? I muttered to myself as I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard that my knuckles turned white. I filed a police report and handed everything over that I had. The investigator, a weary-looking man named Detective Carter, seemed skeptical at first. "You're saying that this was your friend?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Well, former friend," I corrected. "And yes, I'm sure it was him. He was the only one in my house besides me." "All right, we'll look into it," Carter said, though his tone suggested that he didn't expect much. Weeks later, I got a call. "We picked him up," Carter said. "He was caught trying to use one of your checks at a grocery store. It turns out he's been busy." "Busy?" I asked. "Writing bad checks, including one for $600 to a high-end electronics store, and opening fraudulent accounts in your name. He also attempted to use a fake ID with your information to purchase $1,200 worth of jewelry on credit. Oh, and there's a warrant out for his arrest in another state. Apparently, he had brutally assaulted his girlfriend during an argument, leaving her with severe injuries. Witnesses said he smashed her phone to prevent her from calling for help and fled the scene before police could arrive." God, you really know how to pick your friends, kid. Hearing about the warrant was a punch in the gut. I had no idea about this side of Eric. We weren't close like we used to, but this? God, I felt like I didn't know him at all. Eric pleaded with me after his arrest. He called from jail, his voice dripping with desperation. "Listen, you gotta help, man. Drop the charges. I messed up, okay? But friends forgive each other, right?" I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. "Forgive you? Eric, you ruined my life. It's gonna take me years to fix this mess, and you just want me to let it go?" "Look, I'll make it up to you," he said, his tone almost pleading. "I swear I'll pay you back." "No, Eric. No, you need to take responsibility for what you did, and that means facing the consequences. I forgive you, but I'm not saving you from this." Eric was sentenced to 15 months in prison. The court tacked on additional time for the warrant he'd been dodging. During the trial, I learned just how far his deceit had gone. He'd been using my identity to fund a gambling addiction and pay off debts to some unsavory characters. It was a sobering reminder of how little I truly knew him. In the real-world incident, Eric is still missing. He not only caused Mike huge financial losses, but also trust on the people had gone down significantly. In his email, Mike also asked me how he should go about rebuilding his life. This incident made him a cynical person. Do you have any advice, Brockaway fam?
This story is inspired from a true incident which happened in the year 2014. A 47-year-old hiker and YouTuber from Las Vegas got lost in the desert. More about the incident after the story. Tyler Finch is now single. My face went numb from shock, and my heart pounded so hard I could feel it vibrating through my chest. I had no clue that he was even considering making our split public. Worse, the post painted me in a negative light, enough that Taylor's fans quickly turned their wrath on me. They flooded my social media with hateful comments, blaming me for everything. The first few days after that announcement felt like a fever dream. I was trapped inside my own home, curtains closed, phone lighting up non-stop with mentions and nasty messages. My best friend Cecilia was one of the few people who tried to support me. She insisted that I get out of the house, but my embarrassment held me captive.
"It's not your fault,"
Cecilia kept telling me.
"You need to remember that, Irina."
I know, I whispered weakly. But why would he do it this way? I still can't believe he didn't tell me beforehand. She shook her head, her voice firm.
Tyler's always thrived on drama. You're better off without him.
But deep down, I felt that something was terribly wrong. Tyler had always liked attention, yes, but he was never this cruel. It was bizarre that he didn't text me even once after dropping such a huge bombshell. Then, to make matters even stranger, he took off to Death Valley on the very day he announced our breakup. I found out from his Instagram stories, photos of the desert, brief videos of him driving into an endless stretch of arid land. No explanation, no apology, just a sudden escape. Days passed, and the hate messages got worse. I barely slept. My nightmares were filled with images of Tyler laughing while I stood helpless in front of a faceless crowd. Meanwhile, Tyler was nowhere to be found. He didn't answer calls, and his Instagram stories stopped abruptly. I decided to follow him. Death Valley wasn't exactly close, but I needed to figure out why he was avoiding me and what was happening behind the scenes. Cecilia warned me not to go alone, but I insisted I'd be fine. The drive there was tense. The desert sun hit me through the windshield, harsh enough that I had to squint, even behind sunglasses. The first day in the valley yielded nothing. I checked a few motels around, asked the clerk at the front desk if they had seen Tyler Finch. Some recognized his face, but said he'd left abruptly or had never actually checked in. The second day was equally fruitless. I was on the verge of giving up when I thought about venturing deeper into the desert, where fewer tourists go. That's when I stumbled upon a well. It was an old, crumbling stone structure, half hidden by a sparse cluster of desert shrubs. At first, it didn't strike me as anything unusual, just a relic from some bygone era. But then I noticed something shiny at the edge. I approached, heart in my throat. I knelt beside it. My blood ran cold when I recognized Tyler's phone lying in the dust. Next to it was a broken chain that belonged to my ex-boyfriend, someone I hadn't seen in years. My hands shook as I picked up Tyler's phone, scanning for clues. The screen was shattered, and the battery was dead, but there was a dried blood smear across the casing. Panic coursed through me. Why would a piece of my ex's jewelry be here, of all places? My ex, Mason, had always been a manipulator, a pathological liar who thrived on sowing chaos. "Tyler?" I called out, my voice cracking in the wind. The desert swallowed the sound. I inched closer to the well's edge, peering inside. It was too dark to see anything but my own jittery reflection in the shaft. My eyes stung with tears. Where was Tyler? Had something happened to him? I called Cecilia that night from my motel room, tears streaming down my face. She immediately said,
Irina, you have to call the police. This is too suspicious.
"I know," I sniffled. "But what do I even tell them? Tyler's phone was there, and I found Mason's chain. I have no explanation for any of it." She was silent for a moment. Then her voice turned urgent.
Irina, you have to trust me on this one. They need to investigate. This is bigger than a petty breakup.
Despite my fear of more public humiliation, I dialed 911 and explained the situation. The local authorities agreed to meet me near the site the following morning. A young officer named Deputy Reed arrived accompanied by a more senior detective, Alvarez. They took my statement, examined the well, and bagged Tyler's phone and the chain as evidence.
"I recognize you,"
Deputy Reed said, a hint of sympathy in his eyes.
"You're Tyler Finch's girlfriend, or ex, I suppose. I've seen him on social media."
I lowered my gaze. "Yes, that's me. I just want him to be okay." Detective Alvarez looked around carefully, squinting in the sun.
"You said the chain belonged to his ex?"
He asked. "Yes," I replied. "I can't imagine why it's here, or how it ended up by this well alongside with Tyler's phone." In the following days, I stayed in Death Valley while the police investigation unfolded. Meanwhile, Tyler was still missing. Rumors swirled on social media. Some said he staged his own disappearance. Others claim I had done something unspeakable. The hate messages continued, but I tried my best to ignore them. My main concern was finding Tyler alive. One evening, just before sunset, I sat outside my motel room, feeling the dry heat on my skin, when Detective Alvarez approached. He spoke softly.
We ran the chain for fingerprints. There's a match for Mason Carter. He has a history of harassment and assault charges.
I wasn't surprised, but hearing it out loud made me shiver. Do you think he abducted Tyler? Alvarez hesitated.
We can't be certain, but we have enough to bring him in for questioning if we find him.
I called Cecilia immediately, my fingers trembling on the phone.
Mason was always obsessed, she reminded me. He probably saw the breakup announcement and thought he could just win you back if Tyler was out of the picture.
But how would he even know Tyler would be here in Death Valley? I asked.
Maybe he was stalking him, or you, for a while,
she said grimly. That night, I heard a noise outside my motel room window. I froze, pressing my ear to the door. Footsteps shuffled, then silence. I slowly opened the door to find a single note pinned to it with a small hunting knife. My breath caught in my throat as I read the words scrawled in black ink. Stop looking for him or you'll regret it. Fear gripped me so tightly, I could barely breathe. In the morning, I showed the note to Detective Alvarez, who reassured me the police were doing everything they could. They arranged for a patrol car to occasionally circle the motel to keep an eye on me. But I knew that if Mason was behind this, I had to be cautious. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more crazy, the authorities discovered fresh tire tracks near the well. They followed them a short distance through the desert and found a makeshift campsite. Hidden under a tarp were shovels and rope, and in the dying embers of a campfire, they found a melted scrap of Tyler's Instagram handle, presumably from some merchandise, but no sign of Tyler himself. Finally, a break came when a hiker spotted a man wandering disoriented in the desert. It was Tyler. He was dehydrated, with a gash on his head, but otherwise alive. The police and paramedics rushed to the scene, and I was allowed to see him briefly at the local hospital.
Irina,
He croaked, his voice weak.
I'm sorry.
Tears blurred my vision.
What happened?
I asked, gently grasping his bandaged hand.
He came out of nowhere. He must have followed me, knocked me out. I woke up in a makeshift shelter. I managed to escape when he left, but I got lost in the desert.
Kenny Veach, a 47-year-old hiker and YouTuber from Las Vegas, disappeared on November 10th, 2014, while searching for a mysterious M-shaped cave near Nevada's Nellis Air Force Base. In June 2014, he had described encountering this cave, noting unusual vibrations and an overwhelming fear upon approaching it. Encouraged by online commenters, Veach attempted to relocate the cave in 2014, but was unsuccessful. Undeterred, he embarked on another journey in November, carrying a 9mm handgun for protection. After he failed to return, his girlfriend reported him missing. Authorities discovered his cell phone near an abandoned mine shaft in the Sheep Mountains, but extensive searches yielded no further clues to his whereabouts. This is a true story which happened with one of our subscribers, Ava, 3 years ago. Honestly, I was shocked to read her mail and all that she went through. When I offered my friend Melissa a place to stay after her engagement with Greg fell apart, it felt like the right thing to do. She'd been my closest confidant since high school. If someone had told me then that she'd nearly destroy my life, I'd have laughed in their face. The first few weeks were fine. Melissa would sit on the couch, chain smoking and binge watching crime dramas, while I worked double shifts at the diner to keep the lights on. She promised to look for a job, but her efforts were half-hearted at best. I let it slide, telling myself she just needed time to adjust. After all, she'd been through a rough breakup. Everyone deserves a little grace, right? Things began to change when she started dipping into my stash of cigarettes. Then it was the food. I'd come home exhausted, hoping for leftovers, only to find the fridge empty. One day, I found her lounging in her pajamas, sipping on what I'd thought was the last can of beer. "Melissa, seriously?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's the third time this week. Can you at least leave something for me?" She waved me off, laughing. "Relax, girl. It's just beer. I'll replace it." But she never did. The final straw came when I noticed my stash of emergency cash missing. It wasn't a lot, just a couple $100 I kept in a shoebox under my bed, but it was enough to set off my alarm bells. When I confronted Melissa, she denied everything. Her indignation was so convincing that I almost believed her. "Why would I steal from you?" she spat, tears brimming in her eyes. "I'm your best friend. How could you ever think that?" I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the next day, I got a call from my boyfriend, David.
She's here.
He said, his voice low.
She showed up drunk, said you'd kicked her out. She had cash on her. Said it was yours.
I could feel the blood draining from my face. David, tell me you didn't let her in. There was a long pause.
I couldn't just leave her on the street. She said she had nowhere else to go.
When I came home that night, Melissa was gone. She left a note on the coffee table. I miss my family, so I'm leaving to be with them. Everyone is better than you. It felt like a slap in the face, but at least she was out of my apartment. Or so I thought. A month later, she called me out of the blue. Her voice was cheerful, almost giddy. I'm pregnant, she announced. Congratulations, I said, trying to muster some enthusiasm. That's great news. I assume Greg would be thrilled. She laughed. You'll never guess who the father is. My stomach dropped. Melissa, don't. It's David, she said, her voice dripping with smugness. I couldn't breathe. You're lying. Why can't you be happy for me instead of being a jealous bitch? I hung up on her. For days, I couldn't think straight. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute, that it felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. But the worst part was yet to come. 2 weeks later, David confessed.
It was a mistake,
he said, tears streaming down his face.
I was drunk. She was there. I'm sorry.
I kicked him out that night. The sight of him made me sick. Ava told me that this event in her life left her broken and significantly reduced her trust on relationships and people in general. For the next 2 years, she avoided making new friends or entering a serious relationship. But as they say, good things come to good people. Ava is in a much healthier relationship with a new guy.
So my sister, who I usually drag on all my crazy adventures, was actually the one who dragged me this year. I'd just gotten dumped by that loser Brad, and Burning Man sounded like the perfect way to burn off some serious rage. And let me tell you, it did not disappoint. The art installations were insane, the music was fire, and the vibes were just otherworldly. We were checking out this sick motorcycle sculpture, and this super hot guy with a beard named Clay strikes up a conversation. Turns out he made the whole thing. Talk about a creative soul. Clay was like a breath of fresh air. He was all about embracing the weird, the wild, and the wonderful. We spent the next few days exploring, dancing under the stars, and even getting a little adventurous. Let's just say Burning Man is the perfect place to experiment with your sexuality, you know? We tried some pretty wild stuff, and Clay was totally into it. My sister, on the other hand, seemed more interested in just watching. I guess she's more of a spectator than a participant when it comes to this kind of thing. Anyway, Burning Man flew by, and before I knew it, we were packing up our RV and heading back to reality. Clay invited us to visit him sometime, and I actually really wanted to go. He was unlike anyone I'd ever met before. Then, out of nowhere, the harassment started. Nasty messages popping up everywhere, on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. I was freaking out. It was like someone was trying to ruin my life. That's when I remembered Clay. He'd mentioned that he worked in IT and was really good at tracking people down online. So I called him. And he was like, "Don't worry, I got this." He sounded so confident, and I guess I was desperate, so I believed him. He promised to find out who was doing this, and I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. A few days later, I get a knock on the door. It's Clay. He looked intense, like a detective in some action movie. He told me he found out who was behind the harassment. My sister. I was speechless. My own sister? Why would she do this? Clay showed me some screenshots and emails, all proof that she was the one trying to sabotage my life. He said she was jealous of me, jealous of my connection with him. I was torn. I loved my sister, but Clay was so convincing. And besides, he was hot. Clay stayed with me for a while, offering comfort and protection. He was like a knight in shining armor rescuing me from my evil sister. We spent a lot of time together, and I started to fall for him. He was everything I'd ever wanted, mysterious, intense, and a little bit dangerous. One day, Clay suggested we make my sister pay for what she did. He had this idea, a slow-acting poison, something that would look like a natural death. I hesitated at first. I loved my sister, even if she was crazy. But Clay was so persuasive. He whispered in my ear, "She deserves it. She tried to ruin your life." I started to see things his way. He was right. She was jealous of me, jealous of our connection. I was finally happy. Truly happy, and she couldn't stand it. I got the poison. It was easy to get. Easier than I thought. I slipped it into her coffee one morning. She drank it without a second thought. I watched her, waiting for the poison to take effect, a sick thrill running through me. But then, something stopped me. I saw the fear in her eyes, the same fear I'd felt when I was being harassed, and suddenly, I couldn't do it. I couldn't take her life, no matter what she'd done. I confessed everything to her. I told her about the poison, about Clay, about everything. She looked at me, not with anger, but with pity. "He manipulated you, Lily," she said softly. "He's dangerous." I knew she was right. Clay wasn't the hero he pretended to be. He was a monster, and I almost let him destroy my life and the life of the only family I had left. But something else was stirring inside me. A thrill, a kind of excitement I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just the fear, it was something else. A pull towards the unknown. I looked at my sister, at the life I'd known, and then I looked at Clay. He was standing in the doorway watching me with an intensity that both terrified and exhilarated me. He smiled, a slow, predatory smile. "Ready for another adventure, Lily?" he asks, his voice a low growl. Suddenly, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I grabbed my bag and walked towards him. We drove away from my house, the engine roaring like a caged beast. Clay drove fast, recklessly, the wind whipping through my hair. We ended up at a secluded lake, hidden deep in the woods. The moon was full, casting long, eerie shadows. "Come on," Clay said, pulling me towards the water. "Let's go for a swim." I hesitated. The water was black and still, and the air was thick with an unnatural energy. But I couldn't resist the pull of his gaze, the intoxicating scent of danger. It was exhilarating, freeing. We swam out to the center of the lake, the moon reflecting in our eyes. Clay pulled me close. "You know," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear. "You're more fun than your sister ever could be."
This story is inspired from a true incident submitted by our subscriber, Noah. In all of his years of working as a trainer, he had never encountered something so bizarre, as weird as the red guy. The first time I noticed him, it was hard not to stare. A guy in a red hoodie, hood up, strings loose, completely obscuring his face except for the faint shadow of his nose, strode into the gym like he owned the place. It wasn't his presence, though. It was what he did once he got there, and made him impossible to ignore. Every evening at exactly 7 p.m., like clockwork, he'd step onto the treadmill. Not just any treadmill either. He had a specific one, the second one from the left closest to the mirrors. It was an unspoken rule. The treadmill was his, and everyone seemed to know it. I'd seen a couple of newbies try to use it earlier in the day, only for the regulars to warn them off with a whisper and a nod towards the clock. No one wanted to cross the guy with a red hoodie. He'd start at a moderate pace, maybe 6 miles per hour, easing into it like any other jogger. But within the first minute, he'd crank it up to 8, then 9, then 10. And then he'd go full tilt, legs pumping like pistons, arms swinging in perfect rhythm. You might think he'd huff and puff, struggle to keep the speed, but no. The man didn't even break a sweat. His breathing stayed steady. His posture never wavered. He was like a machine. And then, just as I'd start to think, okay, maybe he's just a really fit guy with insane cardio, he'd start to air guitar. It was subtle at first. A twitch of his fingers, a slight tilt of his head, but within those moments, it became a full-on performance. His hands moved over the invisible fretboard with startling precision, fingers sliding and strumming like he was channeling Jimi Hendrix himself. His head bobbed in time with the inaudible beat, long, exaggerated nods that turned into outright headbanging. His hood would flop forward and backwards with each motion, but he never stopped. His pace on the treadmill never faltered. 30 minutes of this, half an hour of blistering speed, relentless air shredding, and silent, furious rocking out. And then, just as abruptly as he'd started, he'd stop. No cool down, no walk. He would just hit the stop button, step off the treadmill, and stride outside of the gym without a word to anyone. Not a drop of sweat on him. Not a single strand of hair out of place. The first time I thought maybe he had headphones under the hoodie, blasting some high-octane playlist. But when I caught a glimpse under the hood one evening, there was nothing there. No earbuds, no over-ears, just his intense, focused expression and eerie silence that hung around him like a shroud. The regulars just called him Red, partly for the hoodie, partly for the aura of mystery he carried. Everyone had their theories about him. He's training for a marathon, one guy suggested. Maybe he's in a band, another chimed in. The wildest theory came from Karen, the woman who ran the front desk. He's a ghost, she whispered one night, her eyes darting towards the treadmill. I've never seen him check in, and he doesn't have a membership. He just appears. At first I laughed it off, but the more I watched him, the less certain I became. Red never interacted with anyone. He never spoke, never lingered, never broke his routine. It was like he existed in his own little world, completely detached from the rest of us. One night after he'd left, I went over to the treadmill he always used. I wanted to see if there was some clue or sign of, I don't know, something. But the machine was clean. No fingerprints on the console, no scuffs on the belt. It was like he hadn't been there at all. The last time I saw him was a Thursday. Just like always, he came in at 7 p.m., took his spot on the treadmill, and started his bizarre ritual. But something was different that night. His movements were sharper, more frantic. His headbanging was almost violent. His air guitar shredding more aggressive. It was like he was fighting against something invisible, something only he could hear. I wanted to approach him to ask if he was okay, but something held me back. Maybe it was the intensity of his posture, the wildness in his invisible performance, or maybe it was the way the room seemed to grow colder the closer I got. And then, just as suddenly as he started, he stopped. But this time, he didn't walk out. He just stood there, staring at the mirror in front of him. For a moment, I thought I saw his reflection move out of sync with his body. Just a fraction of a second, like he skipped frame in a video. My breath caught in my throat, but before I could say anything, he turned and walked away. That was the last time anyone saw Red. He never came back, and no one seemed to know where he'd gone. Karen swore she'd seen him in the reflection of the gym's front window one night, but when she turned around, no one was there. I've been a trainer for years, and I've seen all kinds of people. The dedicated, the lazy, the eccentric. But Red was something else entirely. To this day, I still can't explain what I saw or why he was there. All I know is every time I pass that treadmill, I half expect him to see him again. Hoodie up, shredding on his invisible guitar to a song that only he could hear. This incident happened 2 years back at the gym where Noah used to work as a trainer. He told me that even though a lot of time had passed, he still thinks about Red, especially that particular evening.
My name is Charles. I've worked for the same company for 2 years, and in that time, I've climbed the ladder faster than anyone else. Why? Because I know how to play the game. Business isn't about talent or hard work. It's about power, knowing where to step, who to step on, and how to make sure they stay down. Take Terry, for example. She's been with the company for 8 years, busting her tail and racking up accolades. She's good, I'll admit that. But good isn't enough. She doesn't know how to maneuver, how to make people need her. She thinks talent alone will carry her. Poor thing. When I got promoted over her, I could see the resentment in her eyes. It was delicious. I knew she'd been gunning for the same position, but honestly, who would choose Terry? She's too meek, too careful. Meanwhile, I'm bold, decisive, and most importantly, I've got the bosses wrapped around my finger. The Florida conference was my masterpiece. I told the team we'd all be going, but when it came to Terry, I spun a story about limited accommodations. She bought it, as I knew she would. But then she surprised me. She pushed back, offering to stay at an Airbnb just to attend. That was bold for her. I'll give her credit for that. Fine, I thought. Let her come. It'll be easier to put her in her place when she's right under my thumb. I made sure to give her the wrong itinerary and let the resort staff know she was trouble. When she showed up, I could tell she felt out of place. Perfect. A little alienation would soften her up. But then she had the gall to sit with Mr. Jenkins at breakfast, flashing her ideas and stealing his attention. That was a problem. Jenkins liked her too much. If I didn't act fast, she'd turn this whole thing around. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. Terry, I said, why don't you check out the sauna? It's great for relaxation. She hesitated, but I insisted, practically dragging her there. Once she was inside, I jammed the lock and cranked the heat. As I walked away, I couldn't help but chuckle. She'd be out of commission long enough for me to steal the spotlight, and her precious Harding initiative. By noon, I was in the conference room, commanding attention like I always do. My presentation on the Harding initiative was flawless. I'd studied her notes, of course, and polished them into something truly exceptional. The clients were eating it up. Everything was going perfectly until the projector screen flickered to life. There it was. Security footage of me locking Terry in the sauna. The room gasped. Jenkins' face turned an alarming shade of purple. And then, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, Terry stormed in, dripping wet and red-faced, snatching the microphone from my hand. She finished the presentation, and the room erupted in applause. I won't lie, it was a setback. Jenkins ordered an investigation, and for a moment, it looked like I was finished. But I hadn't clawed my way to the top just to be taken down by someone like Terry. I had leverage. I knew things about Jenkins, about the clients, about everyone in that room. When you're as observant as I am, you collect secrets like trophies. While Terry basked in her brief moment of triumph, I made my moves behind the scenes. I leaked just enough dirt on Jenkins to remind him who held the power. A discreet conversation with the clients turned their admiration for Terry into doubt. By the time the investigation wrapped up, the narrative had shifted. Terry wasn't a victim. She was an opportunist, desperate for attention and willing to sabotage the team. Jenkins called me into his office. "Charles," he said, "this whole situation has been a mess, but I've reviewed everything, and I think you handled it as best as you could under the circumstances. Let's put this behind us." Terry, on the other hand, was quietly transferred to a less visible position. I heard she left the company a few months later. As for me, I got a promotion. The Harding Initiative, it's now the Charles Initiative, and it's the crown jewel of my career. Terry thought she could beat me at my own game. But the thing about power is that it's not about being right. It's about being untouchable. And I'm untouchable.
Our friendship began in hope and ended in chaos. I met her when I was new at school, a scared freshman in a sea of faces. I had tried to fit in, but the whispers, the awkward glances, and the loneliness clung to me like a second skin. Then she sat with me at lunch. Her warm smile felt like sunlight breaking through a storm. For the first time, I felt like I belonged. We weren't instant best friends. She had her world, and I was grateful to be allowed in. That night, though, the party, it changed everything. She saved me. She pulled me out of the darkness and into the light. After that, she became my anchor, my everything. I depended on her. Too much, maybe. She had her friends, her plans, but I felt safest when it was just us. And then, slowly, I felt her slipping away. One day she asked, "Jane, have you made any new friends?" I shook my head. "Why would I need new friends? I have you." She sighed. "Maybe you don't need anyone else, but you might find people you can have fun with." I didn't say it, but I thought, fun? Without you? I couldn't imagine it. She was my world. I wanted to be her world, too. When she started spending more time with her new friends, I felt like I was fading, like I was vanishing into the background of her life. I didn't know how to stop it. So I tried to hold on in the only way I knew how. "Nice nose ring," I told her one day. By the next week, I had one too. "Cool hair color," I said another time, already picturing myself with the same shade. If I looked like her, maybe she'd see me again. Maybe she'd remember how it felt when we were just us. But it wasn't enough. Nothing was enough. She started leaving me out of plans. Her friends didn't like me, she said. I tried to be what they wanted, but they weren't her. And they weren't me. One night, I'd had enough. "Why are you pushing me away?" I asked her. "I'm not," she said, exasperated. "You're suffocating me, Jane. I can't be your everything." Her words cut deeper than any knife ever could. Suffocating? I thought I was protecting her, like she had protected me. Didn't she see that? That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, a knot of emotions twisting inside me. I'd lost her. The girl who saved me was gone, replaced by someone who saw me as a burden. I don't remember deciding to do it. I only remember standing over her bed, the knife trembling in my hand. "Jean, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice sharp with fear. I hesitated. I didn't want to hurt her. I just wanted her to see me, to understand. "I need to feel safe again," I whispered. "Drop the knife!" she yelled, trying to push me off. I didn't drop it. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Her betrayal. My desperation. I lunged again, but someone else burst into the room, pulling me away. The police came. They asked me why I did it. My answer? I needed her face, her life, to feel safe. But that wasn't entirely true, was it? It wasn't her life I wanted. It was her. The girl who sat with me at lunch, who made me feel like I wasn't alone in the world. I wanted us back. Now I sit in this cold, sterile room, replaying everything. The doctors tell me I'm getting better, but I'm not sure what better looks like. Sometimes I close my eyes and see her smile. Not the strained smile she wore at the end, but the real one. The one she gave me that first day. I wonder if she ever thinks of me. I hope wherever she is, she's happy. And I hope one day she can forgive me. I hope one day I can forgive myself.
Lydia was more than just my aunt. She was my confidant, my role model, and often my second mother. Growing up, I spent countless weekends at her place, baking cookies, watching movies, and talking about everything. Lydia had a knack for making everyone feel special, a trait that made her loved by all who knew her. She had been single for a long time, focusing on her career and her passions. When she met Trevor, it was as if a missing piece had finally fallen into place.
He's so romantic,
she gushed to me one afternoon.
He surprises me with flowers and writes me little notes. It feels like I've been waiting for him all this time.
I remember the first time I met Trevor. He was tall, with an easy smile and a charming demeanor that put everyone at ease. Lydia introduced him to the family during a weekend barbecue, and everyone instantly liked him. He was attentive to Lydia, always making sure she had everything she needed. They looked happy, so I was delighted for her. But as the weeks passed, cracks began to show.
He's a bit jealous,
she admitted one evening over tea.
He doesn't like it when I talk to people too much. He says it feels disrespectful, like I'm not fully committed to him.
I frowned. Lydia, that sounds controlling. Have you talked to him about it? She nodded, brushing it off.
It's just because he cares so much. He'll get better. He promised.
Despite my unease, I didn't push further. I wanted to believe she was right, that things would improve, but they didn't. I started noticing subtle changes in Lydia. She stopped coming to our regular family gatherings, often making excuses about being busy or not feeling well. When I did see her, she seemed more reserved, less like her usual vibrant self. One evening, she called me, her voice shaky.
He got upset today,
she said.
I was talking to a coworker after work, and Trevor saw us. He waited until we got home to confront me. He said I was disrespecting him, embarrassing him. I tried to explain, but he wouldn't listen.
Lydia, you don't have to tolerate this, I said, my concern growing. You deserve someone who trusts you, she sighed.
I know, but I love him. And when he's not like this, he's wonderful. He says he's sorry, that he just gets scared of losing me.
I didn't know what else to say. I could see his hold on her, and how he manipulated her feelings. I wanted to help, but I felt powerless. As I approached the building, a sense of unease settled over me. I climbed the steps, my heart pounding in my chest. When I reached the door, I knocked softly at first, then harder when there was no response. Suddenly, the door creaked open, revealing Trevor, Lydia's boyfriend. His eyes were wild, his hair disheveled, and his clothes wrinkled and stained red. The sight of him sent a chill down my spine. "Is Lydia here?" I asked, my voice trembling. Trevor stood in the doorway, blocking my view inside. She's not feeling well," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. I pushed past him, my gut telling me I needed to see for myself. What I saw will haunt me forever. Lydia's lifeless body lay sprawled on the couch, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Her chest was a gaping hole where her heart should have been. Red soaked the cushions, the floor, everything. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. "What did you do?" I screamed, turning my face to Trevor. His expression was a mixture of panic and resignation. I fumbled with my phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands. "Please, hurry!" I cried into the phone. "My aunt! She's dead! Her boyfriend! He killed her!" The dispatcher assured me help was coming, but the minutes felt like hours. I hid in the stairwell, listening for any signs that Trevor might come after me. When I finally heard the sirens, relief washed over me. The police arrested Trevor on the spot. He confessed to everything: the escalating jealousy, the possessiveness, the final, horrific act of violence. He told them about the waiter at the restaurant the night before, how he had complimented Lydia, and how that pushed Trevor over the edge. Trevor had been charming initially, sweeping Lydia off her feet with his romantic gestures and kind words. She had fallen hard, believing she had found the man of her dreams. But slowly, his true nature revealed itself. He began accusing her of being too nice to others, seeing her kindness as betrayal. That night at the restaurant, when the waiter had asked if they were siblings and tried to give Lydia his number, Trevor's jealousy boiled over. He managed to keep it together until they got back to her apartment. But once inside, he lost control. In a blind rage, he choked her to death. And then, in an act so depraved, he cut out her heart. The trial was swift. Trevor showed no remorse, his eyes empty, as he was sentenced to life in prison. But for me, and everyone who loved Lydia, the pain and the horror will never fade. I visit Lydia's grave often, bringing her fresh flowers and speaking to her as if she could hear me. I tell her about the things she's missing, the small joys and sorrows of life, and I remind her that those who knew her deeply and truly loved her.
There were 3 participants left in the competition: me, Tracy, and Marcia. I didn't know Marcia that well, but Tracy and I had developed somewhat of a friendship over the last few weeks. We helped each other survive the Simon Says challenge without getting squashed by boulders. She wasn't the most physically able contestant, but she was great at figuring out clues and calming the other players down when things got tough. And now, after watching the other 47 contestants get eliminated in increasingly disturbing and morbid ways, the 3 of us were finally safe. The front man announced over the loudspeaker that we were supposed to meet at the round table to discuss how we would divide up the prize money. We sat across from each other at the circular table. It looked so much bigger now that there were only 3 of us left. We each had a glass of champagne and a small chalkboard in front of us. Even though the game wasn't officially over yet, this was the first time in weeks that I didn't feel scared or paranoid. The loudspeaker crackled, and the front man's voice congratulated us on a job well done. We'd survived all 12 challenges without getting hurt. He told us to clink our glasses and enjoy the victory. Tracy looked at me from across the table, silently asking if we really should drink the champagne. Since day one, this game had been filled with tricks. She didn't touch her glass, and neither did I. Marcia held hers up to her mouth, but she wasn't drinking either. "It's okay," the front man said. "This is the time to celebrate. Trust me, there are no more challenges. All that's left is a discussion about your winnings. But we can't start the discussion until you all drink." As always, his voice had a hint of anger. This whole time, we'd never actually seen the front man, but we knew he was always watching us. Eventually, Tracy shrugged and raised her glass. I did too. "To us," she said. All three of us took a sip. The champagne tasted completely normal. It was quite good, actually. Once we set down our glasses, the front man continued. "As a group, you've won $10 million. Congratulations. Now, you must decide if you want to split the money equally. If that is your choice, please write an equal sign on your chalkboard. Don't show the others. If, however, you want the money all for yourself, please write a plus sign." I looked at Tracy's face. She was smiling awkwardly. Marcia's face was pretty unreadable, though. The voice went on to explain that if all three of us wrote an equal sign, then the game is finished. But if even one of us chooses the plus sign, then we have to face our deadliest challenge yet, a challenge that will guarantee that only one of us survives. We sat in silence for a while, until Marcia finally said, "I'm choosing to end things now." "Me too," Tracy said. They both waited for me to respond. I really didn't want to go through another deadly challenge, and I was more than happy to split the winnings. But I didn't know if I trusted Marcia to tell us the truth. Marcia glared at me, as if my silence was proof that I was going to backstab them. "I'm with you guys," I said. "Let's share it." The voice told us to write our answers on the chalkboards and keep them hidden. As I'd promised, I wrote an equal sign, hoping that the others did the same. We lowered our boards to keep them hidden, and then the front man told us to reveal our boards. Tracy went first. She wrote an equal sign. I wasn't surprised. I went second, revealing that I too had written an equal sign. Then we had to wait for Marcia. Her face was still frustratingly blank. Slowly, she flipped over her board, revealing one more equal sign. I immediately squealed with excitement. No more games, no more danger. The three of us were going to walk out of here with $10 million to share. The middle of the round table opened up, revealing a platter of 3 gold medals with a circular container of shimmering liquid in their centers. They were very pretty. We each reached out and picked one. It was a lot heavier than I'd expected. Once all three of us had the medals around our necks, the door at the end of the room opened by itself. I couldn't see what was on the other side, but I could hear voices. It sounded like a live studio audience. "And now," the front man announced, "you may step through the door. Once you're on the other side, you will receive your prize. But do not close the door before everyone exits. It will lock behind you." We all stood up. After all this effort, all we had to do was walk into one last room. But when I looked at Marcia's blank expression, a dark thought occurred to me. What if she closed the door before Tracy and I made it through? Would that mean she'd keep all the money for herself and leave us with nothing? Would that mean we'd be trapped in the mansion forever? I couldn't let that happen. While they both walked slowly to the door, I rushed past them. I even pushed Marcia to the side. I ran through the door first. No matter what happened, I'd get my prize. But if I closed the door before they made it out, I'd get their prizes too. I knew we had just voted to share, but I couldn't stop myself. $10 million was a lot of money. So just as they reached the door, I grabbed the handle and pulled. Marcia tried to stop me, grabbing the medal that was hanging from my neck. She was able to rip it off me, but that didn't stop me from closing the door completely. They pounded on the other side, but there was nothing else they could do. I felt a little guilty. but I also felt proud of myself for using strategy to win the game at the last minute. I turned around, and for the first time, I saw VIPs watching me. Their faces were covered with masks. They were clapping and seemed thrilled to see me. Then the front man approached me. "Congratulations, Pam." "In one final surprise," the front man announced, "Pam has decided to take all the money for herself." He pulled a cloth away from a small platform where a huge pile of gold coins was waiting for me. My heart raced, but I felt a little woozy, too. "Unfortunately," he continued, "I forgot to mention that your celebratory champagne was laced with a fast-acting poison. If left untreated, you only have hours left to live." That's why I was feeling so woozy. That's why the stage felt like it was spinning under me. "To be fair, I've given you the antidote in your winner's medal. Just break it open and drink the liquid and you'll be fine." I reached toward my neck, completely forgetting that I no longer had my medal. It was still on the other side of the door. "Oh no," the front man said in fake surprise. "All this money is yours, but you only have hours left to enjoy it." Then he walked over to the door and knocked. "Tracy, Marcia, you will go home empty-handed, but please remember to drink your antidote." So in the end, I won the competition, but my one selfish act was my death sentence. The rain was coming down in sheets, blurring the already dim streetlights of this Jersey suburb. I pulled up in front of the address, the pizza box precariously balanced on my lap. Number 13 Elm Street. Another one of those houses that looked like it belonged in a horror movie. All overgrown bushes and peeling paint. I grabbed the pizza and the delivery bag, shivering slightly in the downpour. The porch light was off, but I could see a faint glow from inside. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. I glanced at my watch. 10 minutes late. Another late fee. Great. Just as I was about to give up, I noticed it. A hand. A pale, limp hand hanging out of the mail slot. It was unsettling, to say the least. I took a step back, heart pounding. Then I saw it. A small, bright pink sticky note taped to the top of the hand. It read, "Money's under the doormat. Here's your tip." I mumbled, shaking my head. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to run. But the promise of money and the thought of avoiding another late fee overruled my fear. I cautiously approached the doormat, peering underneath. Sure enough, a wad of bills lay nestled amongst the dirt and grime. I snatched the money, stuffing it into my pocket. As I turned to leave, I noticed something else. A faint metallic glint beneath the hand. Curiosity piqued. I reached down and pulled out a small, ornate dagger. It was cold and heavy in my hand, the blade sharp and menacing. I stared at the dagger, then back at the hand. What in the hell was going on here? Suddenly, the front door creaked open. I jumped back, nearly dropping the pizza. Standing in the doorway was an elderly woman, her face a mask of pale, powdery makeup. Her eyes, however, were wide with a terrifying intensity.
"Did you get the money?"
she rasped, her voice a chilling whisper. I stammered, Yes, ma'am, under the mat." She nodded slowly, her gaze lingering on the dagger in my hand.
"Good. Very good."
She stepped out onto the porch, her movements slow and deliberate.
"Come in,"
she invited, her voice surprisingly gentle.
"I have something to show you."
I hesitated, every alarm bell in my head screaming at me to run. But the lure of whatever was inside, and the lingering fear of what might have happened to the hand, compelled me to obey. The inside of the house was dark and gloomy, the air thick with the smell of dust and decay. The woman, whose name I learned was Mrs. Hawthorne, led me down a long, dimly lit hallway.
"You know,"
she said, her voice a low murmur,
Some people think I'm a witch.
I forced a nervous laugh. I wouldn't believe that, Mrs. Hawthorne. She chuckled, a dry, rattling sound.
They're not far off the mark. I have a gift.
She stopped in front of a heavy oak door.
This,
she announced,
is my workshop.
She fumbled with the lock, her hands trembling slightly. Finally, the door swung open, revealing a small, cluttered room. Shelves lined the walls, overflowing with jars filled with strange liquids, dried herbs, and animal bones. In the center of the room, a cauldron bubbled over an open fire. Mrs. Hawthorne turned to me, her eyes gleaming.
I saw you, you know. You hesitated. Fear gripped you. But you took the money. You're a survivor.
I felt a shiver crawl down my spine. I don't know what you mean, Mrs. Hawthorne.
I see potential in you,
she continued, ignoring my protests.
Raw ambition, a hunger for more. I can help you achieve your desires.
She gestured towards the cauldron.
This,
she whispered,
is my elixir. It grants power, wealth, anything you desire.
I stared at the bubbling potion, mesmerized. My mind raced. No more late fees. No more struggling to make ends meet. I could have anything I wanted.
All you have to do,
Mrs. Hawthorne continued, her voice hypnotic,
is drink from the cauldron.
I felt myself drawn to the cauldron, its promise of wealth and power intoxicating. But then I remembered the hand, the dagger. I remembered the fear that had gripped me when I first saw it.
What happened to the hand?
I asked, my voice trembling. Mrs. Hawthorne's smile faded.
That was a test.
I felt a wave of nausea wash over me.
A test? Yes,
she said, her eyes hardening.
A test of your courage, your resolve. You passed.
She reached into the cauldron with a long, gnarled finger and dipped it into the bubbling liquid. Then she turned to me, her eyes filled with a predatory gleam.
Now,
she hissed,
drink.
I backed away from her, fear finally overriding my greed. No, I gasped. I don't want it anymore. Mrs. Hawthorne's smile returned.
Too late,
she said. She lunged at me, her hand outstretched, the potion dripping from her fingers. I screamed and scrambled backwards, tripping over a stray bone and falling to the floor. I scrambled to my feet, my heart pounding. I had to get out of there. I ran towards the door, but Mrs. Hawthorne was faster. She blocked my escape, her eyes burning with an unholy light.
You will drink,
she hissed, her voice echoing through the room. I turned and ran, not knowing where I was going, just desperate to escape. I stumbled through the dark house, bumping into furniture, gasping for breath. Finally, I reached the front door, bursting out into the pouring rain. I didn't stop to look back, just ran until I reached my car. I sped away from the house, my heart still pounding. I didn't look back, I didn't even slow down. I just kept driving further and further away from Elm Street, from Mrs. Hawthorne, from the terrifying glimpse into the world of darkness and deceit. I never went back to that neighborhood again. I quit my pizza delivery job that night. The memory of the hand, the dagger, and Mrs. Hawthorne's chilling smile forever etched into my mind.